Our state has some incredible problems. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. I'm here to talk about that with you and talk about the trends that have shaped this state and dragged us in one direction or another. We're not really we're not realizing the dream we had way back in the early 2000s or even around 2008 or 9 or 10. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. Welcome to Wowbiz Nebraska. We're going to get it on right now. An earthquake is coming, or at least the fault lines are obvious right now. Disruption is right around the corner in your industry because of technology. We're going to talk about that today, and we're going to talk with Bruce Arendt, my favorite co-creator, right here today on Wowbiz Nebraska.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
My pleasure to have you. You add a real dimension here, and this is a complicated subject. And we want to really talk about it. And just about everybody that is watching us either knows about technological disruption or is maybe a little bit nervous about what it's doing to their industry. So we're going to talk about, in fact, I'm going to challenge you and I'm going to challenge our viewers right now.
Okay.
Let's think of some industries that have already been disrupted or are likely to be disrupted where the whole ball game changes. Perhaps people are laid off or there'll be no more jobs in certain areas of the industry. Or all kinds of interesting things could happen, unpredictable things.
Right.
What would be an example of some industries?
Things that you never would have thought of that I've observed, well, everybody's observed, like Uber and Lyft, what it's done to the taxi industry. I'm sure that's been incredible.
Yeah, ride sharing completely decimated the taxi and even the black car industry, you know, all of that. So you're right, that's one great example. How about manufacturing? You know, manufacturing and robotics and so on, or assembly line stuff, you know, that's a big deal,
It's
man.
completely, and in my world of publishing, that has changed dramatically in the last 10 years especially.
Yeah.
You know, between self-publishing and just the rise of the internet and all that kind of thing, with Amazon selling books as opposed to bookstores, it's totally changed.
Yeah, remember how we used to go to Borders and hang out for all Saturday morning and go to the little discussion groups and so on? And I really miss that.
I do too.
I go to Barnes & Noble as much as I can.
Yeah.
But
I still like to support the local independent bookstores. I mean,
and you know
my
what?
heart, that's where my heart is.
I know,
you know,
I agree. I love picking up the book covers. I'm actually inspired in many cases by the designs and of course, the titles of the books and so on. It's fun to wander through them. Amazon can't come close.
You can't, looking on your phone's
it's not
screen
the same.
is not the same experience.
No, exactly. No. Well, how about some other examples of disruption? How about going to the grocery store and the retail checkout people, and you're doing it yourself?
Everywhere
and so on?
you go, you're checking out your own groceries now.
Exactly.
And you know what the thing is? It's funny. We all adapt to that without even hardly making any kind of a statement. You just kind of go along with it because that's the way things go. And there's nothing wrong with it per se, but it really has changed things.
It really has. It's hard to form a personal relationship or some kind of rapport with a machine that goes as you move your product across the scanner and so on. But sometimes I'll be doing that and I'll look across the store and I will see, of course, some of the checkout people. And and I'm thinking to myself now, are they going to be gone in 6 months? You know, you just don't know.
You don't know.
Right. And by the way, we're probably putting a pretty negative spin on this. I think, you know, there are many benefits associated with this that we're not talking about.
Well, and there are benefits in the sense that from the user standpoint, like for instance, when I travel, I just book, I used to always go through an agency.
Sure, that's a great example. Travel
I book
agents.
my own stuff now, you know, and it's very convenient for me. I can just do it at 2 in the morning if I want to, or just easy. Yeah. But that's putting somebody out of a job.
That's huge. But yeah, we don't talk about it too much because we sense that, for instance, at the scanners, when they're doing this, they are lowering the labor costs somewhat. If they pass along the savings to us, we're able to buy the products at a very competitive price.
Right.
Although you always wonder whether the corporation is passing those savings along in total or they're just a few pennies here and there and they're keeping the rest of those margins. I'm sure that varies from place to place. But it's a very, very interesting story. And to me, I mentioned at the intro, I liken it to an earthquake. You know what I'm saying?
It kind of is. It's kind of this ripple effect that goes through everything.
Yes, you know? Yes, and everything's a little bit askew in terms of the business model. So I'm going to share with you. Did you know this? I was going to share this with you. 30 years ago, I was personally and my wife and I were in the San Francisco earthquake. That was '89.
Yeah,
and
that was 30 years ago.
30 years ago. I know it's hard to believe. And I was on the phone that day, and neat little office there just on the edge of Jackson Park in San Francisco. And Jackson Park is a beautiful 2-block green, cool little park with cappuccino stands. And you go, whenever you walk by there early in the morning, 7:30, there must be like 80 elderly people doing Tai Chi.
Oh, really?
Yes, on a slope, And they're teachers doing this, and they're all in sync, And this is what I would look at as I went to the office in the morning.
That's a good way to start your day.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And with my cappuccino cup that I'd pick up on the way, and it felt pretty good. But anyway, so there I was in my office, and I'm talking to a Taco Bell franchisee, and that was my client at the time. And I just happened to glance up at the walls. I'm chatting with him, and I have a big bookcase. Of course, I always have my books. And I looked at the bookcase, and the bookcase was tipping out from the wall about, 3 inches, maybe a little more. And the books were starting to, like, in slow motion, topple off the top shelf,
Did it even
of my bookcase,
Did it even occur to your mind in that moment what was going on, or
it was
hard
so
to...
surreal
Yeah.
that my mind actually kind of said, this isn't really happening.
Yeah.
I was so engrossed in this conversation, and here's the kicker: the phone line had been cut off seconds earlier.
You're talking to yourself.
I'm talking to myself, and I'm looking at this, going, "Do we have a problem here?" So at that precise moment, I have an administrative assistant, this young gal, and she screams at me from the lobby, right, and runs into my office while I'm still on the phone, by the way.
By yourself?
By myself, and zooms under my desk.
Oh, my.
She says, "Lynn, we're in an earthquake." All right, this all happened. And when it finally occurred to me what was really going on, I dropped the phone and ran out of the building, down the steps. And I have to tell you, it's one of the strangest things. Of course, I had my suit and tie on and so on, and I'm sprinting because my wife and I lived in a 25-story apartment building.
Wow.
Just on the other side of the park. So it was about a 2-block area, and then there was our apartment.
How long was it shaking? I mean, how long does it last?
Well, the shaking continued this entire time. And so...
while you're trying to just get out of the building?
Yeah, I'm getting out of the building. And the surface of the ground would be like 5 or 10 degrees. I mean, it wasn't like I had any, eruptions right in front of me. But as I looked,
out of whack.
Everything was out of whack. And as I looked to the right and the left, there were a lot of small retail stores that had fallen.
Oh my gosh!
There was fire everywhere.
From gas lines.
Gas lines were broken.
Wow.
So you could smell the gas. A lot of smoke everywhere.
Did the Tai Chi people even?
They weren't there.
Okay. No, I thought maybe they just kept.
But they would be the most balanced of us all, probably. That's a great point. So I'm running across across this park, and part of me is noticing this incredible chaos.
Sounds like a bad dream.
It was a bad dream. Yeah.
Oh man.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going. I mean, it was a moment that I can't shake. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this building where we live is going to be crumbled. I'll never see my wife again. She's probably under rubble, cement or something.
Because some people were at that point.
Absolutely. And you could hear people, around you screaming and sirens, of course. And but it was so serene in the park. And then I ran past the cappuccino stand and it had been knocked over. And I thought, oh boy, we got trouble now.
There's a loss.
We have real trouble now. That was symbolic. So anyway, so I get to the very edge of the park and I look up and our apartment building's still there.
Huh.
Couldn't believe it. Now, there was about 400 or 500 people kind of milling around there in front of the building, on the edge of on the street. Everybody's just kind of talking loud and milling around, and I didn't know what to think.
Kind of in shock.
Everybody was in a daze.
Yeah.
And trying to find their friends or wives or, and so I started to yell, I'm yelling out my wife's name on top of all of this, all right? And I noticed as I'm yelling, I hear people maybe 200 yards away that are in Embarcadero Freeway, and they're in their cars. And Embarcadero Freeway is a 2-tier freeway, and the top tier of concrete had fallen down on some cars.
Oh man!
And trapped people in their cars underneath. And they were screaming and yelling at all of us because they were above us. They could see us all running around like mice on the surface of the ground. It was an amazing moment. I felt so guilty that I wasn't going over there to try to help them.
There was probably nothing you could do.
Well, I know
really.
I couldn't get across the water. They're out there on
Right.
top of the Oakland Bay. And so I scream and yell, and finally my wife hears me, and I find her, you know. And obviously we're very emotional and so on. I'm so grateful that she's alive.
Wow.
And I finally said, what went on here? I mean, how come this thing isn't down on the ground like everything else? And she says, I overheard people asking the same thing. And she said, they said there's rollers under the basement down there in the foundation, and so that when the ground moves and stuff like that, somehow the entire building adjusts automatically.
That's brilliant.
It is unbelievable. I never heard of such a thing in my life. And I mean,
Thank goodness for engineers, right?
yeah, exactly. And it's a physics and you know, pressure displacement and all that. Yeah. And I'm like, wow. So Bruce, ever since then, and by the way, I haven't spoken about this for 30 years. I only now began speaking in front of groups, and I'm happy to speak to anybody out there that's watching this show. This is a great presentation, you know.
Right.
It really is, because the key is these rollers, right? They're buffers,
Yeah.
right? And they move and they adjust. So the question becomes, now back to the beginning of the show, right?
Okay.
How does a company that is in the middle of an earthquake, or they see it coming at them, you know, the fault line, and it's like, you know, your building's going to be swallowed up. That's all symbolic, but I'm saying, you know,
How do you roll with the flow?
how do you roll with it, right? How do you adjust? How do you survive it? Maybe you reinvent yourself? There's got to be some way. Maybe there's a system for resilience. That is the key word, is resilience.
Yeah, and awareness, I think.
Yeah,
because
vigilance.
I think you vigilant.
Yeah.
Because you have to anticipate. Well, that's exactly what those engineers did. They anticipated that there was going to be an earthquake. They were looking way ahead, and they didn't know when it was going to come, but they knew it was going to come, and so they anticipated that, and they adjusted for it.
So let me ask you, before we get to our halftime here, we're going to be doing that very soon. Maybe we can come back to this topic, you know.
Yeah.
But the question is, at a business level, at an organizational, at an industry level, what are some things that companies can do that will enable them to endure and tolerate the fluctuations that are going to be taking place, unpredictability and all that? Then we could flip it around and talk about personal, right? Talk about people's personal lives, and when earthquakes or turbulence or unexpected crises enter their lives, right? How do they endure it? How do they maybe transform it into something positive? Who knows?
Yeah,
right. That's a fascinating topic.
You
as
don't want
well.
to be caught flat-footed, though. You want to kind of be nimble and ready to.
And I think you just hit on it right there. But I think one of the secrets is flexibility.
Yeah.
So you don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you have to sustain failure in one aspect of your life or whatever, or your business, that there are other things going on that can be positive.
Right.
Right. And
You're
so
diversifying your portfolio.
yeah, well, in a way.
You hear about that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, I know that's a very interesting thing. So, Bruce Arendt, you've done a great job with us on this first thing, this earthquake, this turbulence. It's for every industry, so it's very, very valuable. And I appreciate your input on that.
I'm glad you made it through that. Okay.
Yeah, really. I was getting emotional, wasn't I? All right. Well, listen, what we're going to do is we're going to acknowledge our wonderful sponsors. We have two of them. We're going to chat about them for a couple seconds, and I want our people at home to understand that these people are really pioneers insofar as working with us, stepping out and trying to help Wowbiz Nebraska be the incredible show that I think it's evolving into with your help. So we're going to do that, and we're going to come back, and if we can, well, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about the earthquake, the resilience, and then we're going to segue into the Tech Collaborative, and a brand new organization focused on creating a pipeline of getting high school kids through college and out there, apprentices and interns, and we need to pump up the number of software developers and people like that in this particular state. It's not going to be easy to do, but they've got some very talented brand new person that's heading it up.
Okay.
And but the research is really grisly.
Really?
Yeah, it really sets the stage. So we'll talk about that soon. But first of all, let's talk about Curzon Promotional Graphics. You are an illustrator par excellence, so you know better than 99% of the viewers right now the power of visual imagery. Isn't that right?
That is everything, because we are affected by what we see, you know, more than anything, I think. I think our eyes pick up on the slightest little cues.
Yes.
And
we form judgments based on
we
that.
do, and right or wrong. you know.
Yeah.
But image is a huge thing. And,
Yeah. And branding continues to be extremely important. I even think, by the way, personal branding is enjoying quite a popular thing, because we have so many freelancers and solo people that are floating around, and they're trying to make a living and so on. And so everybody's kind of getting thrown into the pond. It's a little muddy. It's
because of the disruption.
The disruption, it's hard to know who's doing what. So it's really important to be unique and pop out and be consistent in your personal brand or your organizational brand. So Curzon Promotional Graphics gets that. They're veterans. They're outstanding. They produce very competitively. You don't want to go overseas. They'll match those prices if possible. And they're just a good
They really
good
make
vendor.
you look.
They really will. And they've been around 30 years. All right, now let's talk about somebody new, alphatech1.com. Now, this is a small firm here in the Omaha, Nebraska area. They do something that I appreciate, and I think everybody would. They come to your house or your office, they get your hardware, your computer, and take it back, and then they call you and say, hey, this is what's wrong, and this is what it'll cost to handle it, and so on. And if you say, no, I don't want to spend that, they'll drive it all the way back and give it back to you and reinstall it.
Like a house call. I remember as a kid.
It's a house call.
I remember as a kid having a house call from a doctor. I mean, I'm that old.
Wow.
And yeah, I know.
We're going back to that, by the way, but that's a different subject. Go ahead.
But that's amazing. I thought that era was gone.
Yeah.
And but here we are. You're talking about somebody doing this.
Yeah. And this is one of the most problematic things that kind of drags us all down. We know that security is an issue, bigger issue than we even want to talk about, not to mention viruses and all that. So alphatech1.com, very, shall I say, a lot of expertise, very insightful, hardworking guy.
Because that's an area where you can be out of your depth very quickly. I mean, I can. I can't.
Yeah.
I am helpless.
You're lucky to tread water when it comes down to that.
I can barely tread,
So he's outstanding. So Alphatech One and Curzon Promotional Graphics, those are our sponsors. We'll have more in the future, but thank you so much to them. And if you're in the market for that kind of service, please make sure that you look them up and utilize those particular vendors, okay?
Good.
All right, we're on that. Now, back to Wowbiz Nebraska, and I found this subject about resilience, being able to endure disruption or earthquake, as we're calling it. And so have you thought of any other, if you were in front of a bunch of CEOs right now and they're a little bit nervous about their industry, and they're trying to get some general suggestions. I have one. I'll make a quick suggestion. Because I think, by the way, the principle is important. Okay? So if you have something that is hard and fast, this is how we do things around here. It's almost like having a barrier out there in Florida or in New Jersey where the water's crashing, a tsunami. And if you have a big barrier, it better be strong enough, but ultimately it's going to get knocked over and you're going to have a disaster. Right. So if instead of that wall or that barrier that you guys constructed, it's a symbolic thing, of course, think about a wetlands, right? So it's kind of a soft barrier. So you can have a tsunami, and you'll have disperses and kind of absorbs and so on, and will go away in a week or two. You see what I'm saying about that? Yeah. So now try to think symbolically about what could those mean. For instance, we only serve this industry. Our products are customized, and we love to sell to doctors or medical technicians. That's what we manufacture. Now something comes along and completely changes the medical technology industry. All of a sudden, our product isn't needed anymore,
right.
And that's an earthquake, right? Unless we have other industries that we can sell our technology to. That would be one example.
That's a great example.
Yeah. The other thing is banking and financial services. Now, they're very proud of their, FDIC, et cetera, all the different things that they do to make our monies secure, and we respect that, of course.
Sure.
But here comes Capital One saying, banking doesn't have to be that way. We can have coffee and we can sit around and take a look at your pictures of your family and have a really interesting conversation and so on and so forth. And yes, we'll handle every single financial thing, whether it's your personal budget, right, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Same with like stock trading.
Oh yeah, now there's an industry that better rethink how they handle things.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, financial brokers and so on, because you can go online, obviously, and make a lot of transactions. Now, of course, if they were here, what would they say? Oh,
Well, and I think they would be right in saying you don't know necessarily what you're doing.
Right.
Because I wouldn't necessarily.
No.
But at the same time, I would have the capability to go out and make my own mistakes.
Yeah.
It'd
be hard to avoid that, especially if the transaction costs are much lower.
Right.
Yeah. So you know, you got to have, I think, a diversification and some flexibility in your operating system. Have a plan B, maybe a plan C. But you know, you get these companies that are so busy and caught up in their daily operations, very hard to get them focused on some alternative reality.
Because they're dealing with the day-to-day.
Yeah, it's really hard for them to imagine anything other than the stuff that's coming at us right now.
So like, as we've said before in other conversations, you need an outside perspective to help you sort of realize.
Broaden your notion.
Kind of realize where the fault lines are.
Yes.
To use that analogy.
Yes. In fact, I would say, you've made a great point here, you need to identify what are the fault lines.
Yeah.
For instance, a fall off in sales to this particular segment of group of people that for some reason they seem to not be buying as many of them as they did 2 years ago.
Right.
What does that mean, you know? And if you don't have a researcher or somebody you can kind of trust, a third party to go out there and kind of snoop around and have some objective dialogues, because you can't send the sales guy and say, hey, what's going on out here? How come, you know, they won't get the real answer.
No.
So it's very interesting identifying fault lines. Well, thank you so much. One quick idea now, adversity and the rollers underneath the building that prevent it from falling over. What about on a personal level? That's a big one.
That's where it gets even tougher, I think.
Yeah.
You know, because we're so self-contained and we do so much self-think, and we don't reach out, I don't think, enough to others to help us think through problems or anticipate problems.
Right.
You know.
Right, exactly. We think we should be able to handle it all.
I think the same principles apply, though, probably. I mean, generally.
Yeah,
between
flexibility and diversity.
Right.
You know, I think you're right about that. That's an excellent point. I think also you need to have some kind of a psychological paradigm or a spiritual paradigm or something like that.
Right.
That can help you deal with it. But there's a lot of anxiety there and a lot of uncertainty. So very interesting thing. We'll come back to this again.
Okay.
All right. I'd like to just talk here for a few minutes about a fascinating conference I attended recently out at the Sac Air Force Museum, right between Lincoln and Omaha, Nebraska. And that was there was some research presented there by Tom Chapman about kind of serving this new group called Tech Collaborative. All right. Now, this is a very interesting group. They're attacking a primary problem in our entire state. By the way, it's all over the country, by the way. It's not just us. But ours is particularly challenging. But the bottom line is we don't have nearly enough youth that are studying and are becoming tech professionals, basically software developers.
Okay.
Yeah. There are companies that are choosing to not come to Nebraska because they just can't find enough people to hire that have real skill in software development. Yeah.
Wow.
I think we all kind of underestimated this a little bit. Yeah. And the artificial intelligence stuff is becoming more and more sophisticated. It's growing, it's learning, and so on.
And it's growing faster and faster all the time.
It really is. Yeah. So the Tech Collaborative is focused on they start with high school. They have quite a relationship with the school systems. They're going to intensify that. And same way then they're going to follow them through college. They're going to make sure that businesses see these people coming. Somebody who's junior in high school, you might actually know about them if you're out in Kearney, Nebraska, and you have a company who could use them. In other words, it'll be kind of a minor league baseball.
Yeah.
See what I'm following these people, right? And getting them plugged in so when they arrive, they really are really prepared to contribute.
But to provide a conduit between...
Got a conduit. Now, they kind of have the pieces in place. That's the thing. I want to emphasize that. It's just that there's a little bit of a disjunction between the various components. And that all kind of needs to be smoothed out, quantified, and so that the transfer of talent, shall we say, we used to call it technology transfer, now it's talent transfer, right, is somewhat fluid and gets to where it needs to go efficient.
But it's good that it's being addressed now, because that problem's not going to go away.
No, it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah.
And the bottom line about this research, above and beyond what I've just shared with you here, is that we are terrible. Now I'm going to include Omaha and Lincoln in this to some degree, but really the other portions of the state are much worse. They really have a problem. I even heard it said that anybody that's a talented potential tech candidate, we've already sucked them out of mid-central Nebraska and western Nebraska. They're already have been brought into Omaha and Lincoln.
Is that right?
There's not much talent there in that category. There's some very bright people, but not focused on technology.
Wow.
Yeah, so we got to be careful that we don't misstate there. But,
Right.
but the bottom line is we all sit around, and by the way, this applies to all citizens, not just tech people. We want business people, sharp people to move to our communities. That's the universal idea.
Right.
But we seem to not understand that, A, when we brag about the quality of life in our community, whether it's Norfolk or Wayne or Grand Island or Broken Bow or Hastings or whatever, we tend to shall I say, we think we've got something that's much better than, frankly, comparatively, it is. It's not that much better, definitely not that much different. Right. There must be 100. I saw a map. I can't tell you exactly how many dots I saw that spread out through the Dakotas and Colorado and Kansas and so on. Oh, my goodness, there must have been at least 100 communities that all use quality of life. We've got good roads, and we've got a community college within 20 minutes or whatever. And none of it matters from a marketing point of view.
Right.
Okay.
So it's the whole region.
It's the whole region, and so we actually have to be much more, ask more of ourselves insofar as finding the precise point of difference. Even if it's what we call micro-targeting was the phrase that was used. Comparing our private high school to other private high schools around the region, and ours is better, so if come here, get your kids here, they'll do really well. I mean, this is the kind of pitch we have to get to. We can't just say, oh, this is really a great place, you'll love it, come here.
Yeah.
It's not working.
It has to be specifics.
Oh, it's not working. If you knew the millions of dollars that have been poured into wasteful efforts, because we really are not marketing. I keep coming back to this. We have to be much more disciplined and intentional and creative in our marketing approach if you want to market these communities, whether it's branding and executing it all. And it's not just putting up a sign out there on Highway 3 and say, well, we got that handled. You know? Yeah. And that's how it is sometimes approached.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we're running out of time here, Bruce Aaron. Thank you so much. This is a couple deep dive topics.
They're very deep.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you hanging in there with me. They're very relevant to our audience and many of the people I speak to out there who are looking for some answers as we go into 2020. So, Bruce Aaron, thank you so much for being here once again. I hope that we've resolved all the earthquake and disruption issues and got you up to speed exactly on the competitive challenge we have with technology in the state of Nebraska. So, thank you so much for watching us. This is Wowbiz Nebraska, as you probably well know by now, featuring Bruce Aaron and Lynn Hinderrocker. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Take care.